Traders, how are you? Marcello here, founder of the Day Trading Academy, co-founder of Speed Up Trader, where you guys can come and apply to use our money for just a process of 120 bucks. Today, we're going to be doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week from Malaysia. So one of the things I got to show you guys is this amazing view. Highly recommended. I was able to stay in. I was able to stay at this fancy place. It's super expensive, but I was able to get it with my miles for free. You guys can see this is Kuala Lumpur, and then those are the famous Petronas Towers. If you guys can zoom in on that if you want. We're here in Asia. We have I did a traders fair, and we're also building our team of traders. You guys know that I always try to the goal of me teaching people how to trade isn't necessarily trying to sell more courses. It's really to be able to try to find people to trade our money, especially with Speed Up Trader, right? So that's it's been a great process so far in the US and Latin America. I'll make sure to upload those interviews. You guys told me you want to see the interviews in different languages, and I'll subtitle them in English. And very soon we'll have traders here in Malaysia and Indonesia. We just had a meeting with a guy from China that wants us to go out there. So really excited about that. Don't forget, questions, hashtag Ask Marcello. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, or if you guys are following me on Instagram. I think I'm going to change the Instagram name, but either way, just look for me, Marcello Arrambide or Wandering Trader. I'll be on there. Overall this week, we had another situation, kind of an overarching week of news when it comes to the trade war. I believe that Trump is kind of, whenever he either tweets or launches news, there seems to be an overarching feel now where basically it has to do with this trade war, right? So basically that affected a lot of the news and a lot of the markets overall this week. In general, the markets on Tuesday, especially European stocks, fell on Tuesday. U.S. stocks fell to a 12-week low on Wednesday. The Dow lost 6.69% in May, dipping just below 25,000 for the first losing month since 2012. First losing month of 2019, and the Dow hasn't had a down month since May of 2012. Imagine that. U.S. stocks showed signs of stabilizing on Thursday, but obviously the comments that were made about the trade war and the trade talks between Trump and China reinforced concerns about literally the battle that this is going to be, right, to kind of return to normal overall, because I think we've kind of have overstepped our boundaries now in this kind of situation. U.S. equities went far lower on Friday after the trade rhetoric ratcheted up. China says that it's ready to restrict rare earth metals to the U.S., and Trump threatens to escalate tariffs on Mexico. These are really big news that I'll explain to you guys here in just a moment. Dow on Friday closed for a sixth consecutive week, its longest losing streak since June 2011, and overall the U.S. indices were negative for the week. The Dow was down 3.11%, the S&P 500 was down 2.69%, and the NASDAQ was down 2.47%. Overseas market news, the Asian stock markets, especially the shares of Japanese and South Korean automakers, were affected. Trump essentially said that he's going to slap on a 5% tariffs on all products that are coming from Mexico to be able to make sure that they try to assist to stop the illegal immigration. So the basically what he's trying to do now is use the trade situation to be able to try to have Mexico help him with the border situation, because you guys know he's still trying to get that border wall, and the bureaucracy in Washington hasn't allowed him to. So remember, I never want to get political on the show, so it doesn't matter if you love Trump, hate Trump, or love Obama, hate Obama, left, right, center, purple, green, doesn't matter. I just want to report the facts to you. Just always want to mention that to you as well. The shares of Japanese and South Korean automakers went down, especially on Friday, with the news that he's going to go ahead and put the tariffs on Friday. The European markets mostly lower for the week. Italy is the biggest loser at 2.9%. Istanbul 5.25% positive, the biggest winner in Europe. Latin American markets, the biggest winner is the Bovespa in Brazil, 3.63%. And the biggest loser is Argentina Merval at 3.34%. African and Middle Eastern markets, for the most part, are lower. The biggest winner in the region was South Africa with 2.25% positive. Saudi Arabia was negative 0.18%. Australia and Asian markets are mostly mixed. Malaysia, funny that I'm actually sitting in Malaysia right now, 3.32% positive. And the Nikkei in Japan went down, the biggest loser at 2.5%. Bitcoin, very good week for Bitcoin overall. It went up 6.91% to 8,505.57. There's quite a bit of news, or not quite a bit of news, I want to say interesting piece of news in the financial news. There was a survey done by a company called Duff and Phelps where they interviewed more than 200 financial executives. These are executives, not just financial planners working at the bank, right? They actually said that New York has actually overtaken London as the number one spot, or the number one financial center in the world, because of the shadow of doubt around Brexit. 12% said that, respondents said that Hong Kong is going to be the world's preeminent financial center in the next 5 years, which is up 3% from last year based on the vote. I personally don't believe that in terms of the Hong Kong becoming the next one in the next 5 years. Overall, long term, most likely, but I wouldn't agree that in the next 5 years it's going to be like that, but they are going to be more important, especially Shanghai as well. More analysts have increased the bets that the U.S. Fed is going to cut interest rates not once, but twice this year due to the slowing of growth and the worsening trade war between the United States and China. The USD continues to strengthen as Treasury yields fall as well, which is a problem for the global economy. A stronger dollar makes U.S. goods more expensive overseas, which means more trouble for the U.S. economy because it's not growing, or there's some indications, let's say, that it's not growing like before, especially due to the trade war. Trump administration again decides not to label China as a currency manipulator. It passes the fifth chance to do so in its semi-annual currency report. China's on the list for excessive trade surpluses and is being closely tracked. Germany's 10-year bond yield, regarded as one of the safest globally, fell to a record low on Friday, down 3 basis points to negative 0.25%, as Trump obviously threatens Mexico with the tariffs. Now, one of the things you guys have to know is Germany, actually an interesting fact, I should say, Germany is actually one of the only countries in the world that's actually decreasing its federal debt. If you guys see, United States and Italy and everybody else are actually increasing their debt, whereas Germany, even with all the things that they've had to pay for, I tell you, those Germans are super, super efficient. They're actually lowering their federal debt, which is actually incredible. And for commodities, Prime Minister of Russia is saying that it's considering an extension to the oil output reduction deal with OPEC and other producers. They agreed to cut output by 1.2 million barrels per day from January to 6 months to boost oil prices. U.S. is going to start sanctioning any country that buys oil from Iran after the expiration of waivers on May 2nd. Germany, France, and the UK created something called the Instex in January, which is going to allow companies to actually trade with Iran that is not going to be in dollars, which is actually something interesting. This is going to be essentially a way around the US dollar. And this is actually something that's really interesting. If you guys don't know, the reason why the US can actually place the sanctions in a lot of these other countries is because they own what's called the SWIFT, or they created SWIFT, control SWIFT, however you want to say it. So they can literally shut anybody out of the international financial system because everybody uses that system to make payments. So that's why they're able to do that. And now other countries are starting to create alternatives. Countries in Europe, Iran, more than anything, Russia and China have talked about creating another alternative as well. So pretty interesting to see these countries starting to, you guys can see where this is going, right? The US dollar is going to be less used currency. People are going to start using other systems. Eventually, there's going to be different hubs or centralized hubs around the world. Call them regional hubs is what I think is going to start happening, actually. We're going to have China. Obviously, they'll have to give way to India and also Japan. We'll have Europe in the middle, and then we'll have the U.S. here in the West. Crude oil futures for the week. The U.S. crude went down 10.45%. International Brent went down 7.46%. quite a strong move to the downside. Gold prices again are up this week. They're back above 1,300. They're heading for their first monthly gain since January. It's increasing the demand as a safe haven since Trump vowed tariffs on Mexico, and obviously there's a lot more news about the concerns about the global economic slowdown. Precious metals for the week: gold is up 1.58% at 1305. Silver's up 0.21% at 1466. Political news: Israeli lawmakers are dissolving parliament on Thursday, paving the way for a new election after the veteran Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu failed to form a coalition government before the midnight deadline. And also Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi took his oath of office on Thursday, along with his ministers. The first time, it's including for the first time, that the powerful chief of his ruling Hindu Nationalist Party, won by a landslide victory in the general election. In the economy, the first economic news from the socialist paradise of Venezuela. The central bank in nearly 4 years hasn't reported economic data. The economy shrank 22.5% in quarter 3 of 2018 compared to the same period in 2017. Inflation was over 130% in 2018. And also the earnings from oil exports are down 5.6% year on year to $29.8 billion. So they're continuing to not do very well. Turkish economy contracted 2.6% this year on year. With expectations. Obviously, that has to do with the country's sliding into a recession due to its currency crisis. There's also some news in regards to how the U.S., I should say, says that they want to place sanctions on Turkey for buying the Russian missile system. Turkey should be part of NATO, so that we'll see how that's going to actually turn out. NATO, if you guys don't know, is the agreement between a lot of countries. Basically, they're violating their agreement, or they're not doing, I wouldn't say violating, let's say they're not doing what they're supposed to, right? They're resisting some of the things. So the U.S. is saying that they're looking at sanctioning Turkey for that. Global Payments announced a $21.5 billion deal on Tuesday to acquire rival Total System Services. It's in the latest fintech arms race. It's an all-stock transaction. This giant is now going to serve 3.5 million small to medium-sized merchants and 1,300 financial institutions in over 100 nations. Uber on Thursday reported a $1 billion loss as it spends quite a bit of money on its food delivery and freight business, which sended revenue up 20% in its first quarterly report as a public company. I wonder why their stock was going down, you know what I'm saying? Sprint Mobile needs to offload Boost Mobile to get their $26 billion merger over the U.S. regulatory line. And Amazon has actually been interested in buying Boost Mobile, which could bring in about $3 billion for the new company, assuming that they're going to be allowed to go ahead and merge. Vietnam is one of the fastest growing sources of U.S. imports from Asia, growing 40.2% in quarter 1 from a year ago. It could potentially overtake the U.K. as a bigger supplier to the U.S. if that keeps up the pace. And imports for South Korea rose 18.4% from a year ago. This is a really interesting news. There's a lot of you guys may not know, or maybe you've seen it in the news, how they've been talking about the rare earth metals. These are metals that are very rare, that come from the earth. But basically, China has supplied about 80% of what the U.S. has needed between 2004 and 2017. And they're used in a lot of things, including applications for smartphones, electric vehicles, wind turbines, and even critical, and I quote, critical in defense, energy, electronics, and the automobile sectors. So now the U.S. military is actually working to reduce its U.S. reliance on Chinese rare earth metals. The U.S. actually does have them. They have quite a bit of reserves, but they don't have the capacity to produce them, which the last factories actually stopped a few years ago. China is preparing to blacklist foreign companies as trade tensions from the U.S. continue to escalate. The Chinese government is actually working to establish an unreliable entity list, which would include foreign companies, individuals, and organizations, says China's Commerce Ministry. Retaliation, obviously, for the ban on Huawei. In technology, Apple's winning a patent for a foldable screen for its iPhones and other devices. Welcome to 2019, Apple. Everybody else announced it. Now Apple's starting to create it. They won granted the patent by the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. In investment news, Oklahoma is seeking billions of dollars from Johnson & Johnson due to they're being accused of deceptive marketing. Teva Pharmaceutical is avoiding trial as well after agreeing to pay $85 million but denied any wrongdoing. And the OxyContin maker Purdue Pharma also is resolving claims for $270 million. What can you say about these pharmaceutical companies, right? They're in it for the money. And an unprecedented number of acres of corn is not going to be planted. Growers are actually dealing with a huge flood. Insurance claims of about 6 million corn and acres that they haven't been able to sow. Relentless rainfall and flooding have preventing planting of crops, which is actually pretty important since the corn is actually one of the most important, not important, but one of the most planted agricultural items in the U.S. Trump administration is planning to return mortgage finance giants Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to private shareholder ownership. It's going to include a recap and release to ensure the firms have enough capital. A magnitude 8.0 earthquake struck northern Peru in Sunday near copper and gold mines. Officials are saying that the epicenter was just southeast of a village called Lagunas, but the earthquake was felt in Lima. For all of you guys that are living in Lima, since there's a lot of expats out there, I hope you guys are okay. Tens of thousands of New Zealand teachers are walking off the job on Wednesday after the government announced its well-being budget would call on a lot of teachers for higher pay and shorter hours. Turkey on the verge of facing U.S. sanctions, as I mentioned to you guys, for buying the Russian defense system. It's already leaving. They're not in good shape economically, and obviously that raises questions with their position in NATO. And an unusual fact this week, Belgian former King Albert II, aged 84, submitted a DNA sample after a court order that he had to pay 5,000 euros a day if he didn't submit a DNA sample. A woman is actually claiming that she is his daughter. An all-white albino panda appeared in the natural reserve in China. It's the first of its kind to be documented. The panda was photographed in April with an infrared camera near the southwestern province of Sichuan. And Disney launches its new Galaxy Edge Park at Disneyland with a dedication and ceremony. A lot of actors, including CEO Bob Iger and creator George Lucas, will be there, including some of the famous actors like Mark Hamill and others as well. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to hashtag Ask Marcello for all the questions. Don't forget to subscribe. And we're going to have a great time here in Malaysia. See you soon.